Momo is standing outside the school gate one morning with her new boyfriend, and she's extremely disappointed when the first thing he does is start asking her to lend him some money. The guy then immediately asks to smash, and that's when Momo has had enough and decides to call off their date with a roundhouse kick. But she kind of stinks at martial arts, so the boyfriend says he's done with this and knocks her to the ground. A while later, Momo's friends are trying to comfort her. But what was she expecting to happen when she found the guy off Facebook? They asked her what she could have possibly seen in a guy like that. But the only reason Momo liked him was because she's in love with her idol Ken Takakura, and that guy looks similar to him, so she thought it would be good enough. Later on, Momo's walking through the halls while being depressed that she will never get to date a guy like Ken, and as she walks, she notices a guy in the class next to her that is getting bullied relentlessly. They've been throwing paper balls so far, but now they really want to hurt him, so they are about to start throwing magnets, but Momo gets in their way and takes a seat next to the kid to make them stop. The bullies don't want to mess with her, so they turn away, and as soon as they have lost interest, Momo gets up to walk away and continue her depressed walk through the halls. However, midway through, she gets stopped by the boy she just helped, and he asks her if she's in love. He can only think of one reason why a girl like her would talk with an absolute weirdo like him, and Momo tries to deny having any feelings for him. But that's not what Okuran is talking about. He thinks she's an occult fanatic just like him, and shows her this magazine with all sorts of information about how aliens are real, birds are government drones, and the world is getting ready for a space war. Momo isn't interested and tries to walk away, but Okuran keeps trying to get her attention until she eventually snaps and roasts every aspect of his existence, from his mop head to his industrial strength classes and his weird hobby. She then tells him to never speak to her again. But before she leaves, she realizes she may have been a little too harsh with him. So she walks back and tries to indulge Okuran by telling him she believes ghosts are real. She was just trying to be relatable. But Okuran immediately starts making fun of her for it because he doesn't believe for a second that ghosts are actually real. She's pissed that he would mock her when he believes in the same stuff. But Okuran corrects her and says he believes in aliens from outer space and other weird stuff, but believing in ghosts is just silly. Momo tries to convince him by saying her grandma is a spirit medium and she has seen an exorcism firsthand, but Okuran still doesn't buy it. They spent a few more minutes arguing, and at one point, Momo's friends come down the stairs and they think it's cute how she's getting along with him. To settle their argument, Momo and Okuran decide to make a bet where Momo swears she will prove the existence of ghosts and Okuran swears to prove the existence of aliens. Later that night, Momo walks into an old abandoned hospital and she's getting really creeped out by it. But according to Okuran, this place is a prime location for UFO sightings, and she'll probably get abducted. Abduction means she will be kidnapped and probed by aliens, but Okuran has never actually experienced it himself. Meanwhile, on Okuran's end, he's following Momo's instructions and is headed for an old abandoned tunnel. And he's totally freaking out. And Momo tells him that he's basically guaranteed to be attacked by a ghost if he goes in. But he still insists that ghosts aren't real, so he goes in anyway. Momo tells him to keep his voice down because, according to her internet sources, yelling will only make the ghosts angrier, and Okuran follows her advice. But he can't help but notice that she keeps referring to internet sources, so he asks if she has ever actually seen a ghost in person. Momo plainly tells him she hasn't, and Okuran blows up about it because she is doing the exact thing she complained about a minute ago. He asks how she can have so much faith that ghosts exist when she has no proof of it. But just because she hasn't seen one doesn't mean there's no proof. As she mentioned earlier, her grandma is a spirit medium, and Momo has been living with her ever since she was a child because she doesn't have parents. Okuran's room goes silent for a bit, but Momo tells him there's no need to be so serious about it. Her family has always been really weird. For example, when she was a kid, her grandma would make her wear a charm bag and do a silly pose whenever she walked to school. And naturally, the kids in her class all made fun of her for it. But what really stung was when the boy Momo had a crush on at the time made fun of her as well. She started to resent her grandma after that and thought a bunch of terrible things about her. And recently, she hadn't spoken to her at all. But Momo would still get upset whenever someone said bad things about her grandma, and that made her realize that she wasn't angry about the kids making fun of her. She was angry because they were all making fun of her grandma. She still loves her grandma more than anything, and she even likes how her grandma is a spirit medium because it makes her feel special. She believes in her grandma, and since her grandma says ghosts are real, Momo believes that ghosts are real. Now that Momo has given her reason, she wants to know why Okarun believes in aliens. But Okarun dodges the question and says he doesn't have a special reason to like this stuff, and Momo can't really argue with that. She tells Okarun that he's a lot more confident when he talks on the phone, and likewise, Okarun tells her she's really easy to talk to. Just then, Okarun turns around into his horror. He sees an old lady ghost asking to gobble his schwang. I guarantee someone out there is down bad enough to accept, but that person is an Okarun, so he turns and begins making a run for it. Momo tries calming him down and says that the last thing he should do in this situation is run, because if Turbo Granny catches up to him, he's going to get cursed and she's going to diddle him. Momo's call with Okarun cuts off and she knows something must have happened to him, so she's about to head over to the tunnel so she can rescue him. However, before she can leave, she notices 3 figures standing in the hallway and she definitely knows that ain't good. So she tries to run, but she's immediately captured. A while later, she wakes up and finds herself strapped down in an alien chair. The aliens tell her that there's no need to be afraid of them, but that's kind of hard to believe when they kidnapped her and shredded all her clothes. She demands to be released immediately, but the aliens ignore her and begin explaining their plans. You see, their species only has males in it, so they reproduce through cloning technology. However, that has made them more inbred than a Spanish royal family, so they will be using her body to conduct research on human reproduction. And they're all out of baby oil. Momo refuses to let this happen, but the aliens begin using mind control to stop her from resisting. Just then, Momo's phone begins ringing, and one of the aliens is curious, so it goes over to investigate, and as a result, it gets stomped in the face. An armed man pops out of the phone, followed by the rest of the Okarun, who's under the Turbo Granny curse, and the first thing he does is bite off one of the alien swangs. The alien gets sent flying, and Okarun begins apologizing to Momo because he was clearly wrong about ghosts and got himself cursed. Momo would like to say, "I told you so," but first she needs him to get her out of here. The aliens are confused and wonder what kind of technology allowed Okarun to get into their spaceship through a phone, but he isn't the one they are probing, so they don't want him here. Okarun is trying to keep it together, but the curse soon takes hold of him again, and he now wants to gobble their swamps. The aliens say they are the only ones allowed to do inappropriate things like that, so they take off their skin suits and prepare to fight with telekinesis. But Okarun is too fast for them to keep track of, so he closes the distance and gets in front of one of the aliens before suplexing it by its junk. He then goes after the next ones, but this time, since he is running a straight line, the alien is able to blast him into a wall. The alien is extremely offended that Okarun would dare chomp on his alien brethren's bananas, but it doesn't want to waste any more time, so it turns to continue probing Momo. Okarun yells for it to stop and says if it wants to probe someone, it should be him. He's never had any friends. When he was a kid, he thought aliens may be willing to be friends with him, and that's why he began studying the occult and would stand on the roof for hours in hopes of contacting aliens. However, no aliens ever showed up for him, and that made him believe even aliens thought he was a loser. The people around him would constantly bully him just for the sake of it. But Momo was the first person to stand up for him, and no matter what, he's not going to let her get hurt, even if he has to turn into a monster to do it. He'd be just harnessing the power of the Turbo Granny. But the alien is smart enough to see what he's trying to do, so it quickly double taps Okarun to keep him down. After that, the alien gets back to probing Momo and there's nothing she can do to fight it. But she suddenly has a flashback to the time her grandma was trying to teach her about shy and how she was too embarrassed to try it back then and ran off while calling her grandma the fake spirit Miam. She would like to apologize to her grandma for her outburst back then, but at this point she has nothing to lose. So she tries performing the technique, and to her surprise, it actually works. She blows herself out of her restraints, and Okarun can hardly believe that Momo is a real psychic. She had no idea she could do this, and the alien's telekinesis is no longer effective on her. So with her new power, Roundhouse kicks the aliens so hard that they are sent flying out of the ship. Momo couldn't think she would do that much damage, But the spaceship is going down now, so she starts looking around for Okarun so they can get out of here. However, Okarun has been taken over by Turbo Granny once more, and he tries attacking Momo. But Momo uses her arm to block his bite, and then uses her powers to dispel Turbo Granny's curse. At first, it looks like she was successful since Turbo Granny is now the Okarun's body. But the curse isn't broken because Turbo Granny still has Okarun's swans, and if he wants it back, he's going to have to come take it from her and her tunnel. Turbo Granny then vanishes, leaving Momo and Okarun on the alien spaceship, which is about to go down. The ship crashes through the abandoned hospital and into the street. But remarkably, Momo and Okarun are still unharmed as Momo kicks a hole out of the spaceship. Momo and Okarun regret everything about this night, but Momo now definitely believes in aliens, and Okarun definitely believes in ghosts. With that said, they have no idea what they are going to do now since Okarun's curse causes him to go out of control as soon as Momo stops using her powers on him, and Momo lost all her stuff from the aliens who abducted her. The only way for Okarun to undo his curse is to defeat Turbo Granny, so he gets up and says he's heading over to the tunnel so he can do that. At the same time, he starts taking off his clothes and telling Momo she can wear them to go home. Momo tries to stop him because he will lose control if she isn't around. But Okarun doesn't want to get her involved since he blames himself for how things turned out. He doesn't really have a plan to defeat Turbo Granny by himself, but he's sure he will figure it out somehow. Momo has no intention of letting him go alone after everything they just went through, and she reminds him that the only reason they made it out of the spaceship was because of her powers, so he'd be dead without her. Okarun asks her if she is sure she wants to risk herself to help someone like him, but Momo has already made up her mind, so she walks over to Okarun and tells him to put his clothes back on. However, Okarun tells her to keep his clothes because he's way too embarrassed to talk to her like this. For a second, Momo's heart skipped a beat because Okarun happened to say the exact phrase Takakura-ken usually says, but she tries to brush it off. She has been calling him Okarun this entire time, but she doesn't actually know his name. So she asks into her utter shock. Okarun's real name is Takakura-ken. I appreciate you viewing my anime recap, Unruly Family. Please let me know what you think about this anime recap by liking, sharing, and commenting. And please subscribe to the channel to help us reach 5,000 subscribers.
Take